Hello everyone, I'm Mark. Today on this video we're going to be replacing the spark plug wires, the spark plugs, and the coil on my 71 Corvette. As you know, I just recently had the engine rebuilt. I'm putting the car all back together, and when I bought the car it came with new spark plug wires and coil and everything, but to me the spark plug wires are way too light. I like them a little bit heavier with the insulation and stuff on them, so I went in and ordered a set. Plus, they didn't fit real good. You know, they stuck up, you know, off the distributor. They came straight off. I ordered plug wires, and I'll show them to you here. They come with a 90-degree boot for the spark plug, and then these are cut-to-length wires. So I can trim them back so they fit like they're supposed to on the car, so there's not a lot of excess wires sticking up and in the way. Plus, I also got 90-degree boots for the distributor, so the plug will come out at an angle instead of sticking straight up towards the hood. I think it'll look a lot cleaner. Excuse me, my sinuses are bothering me today. They just started bothering me. The wires I bought, they're the Taylor 8mm. Taylor makes a pretty good wire. And you can see here, this, I don't know how well this will show up, but you can see this is excuse me, this is the original wire here I took off, and then you can see the 8mm. It's quite a bit bigger diameter. I don't know how well that shows up on the film. So you have a lot better insulation stuff on these wires. And then it comes with the instructions, of course, and then two different types of ends. It has one for what I need, which is just a regular distributor with the female connections, and then it comes with the HEI connections if you have the coil and the cap and all that. I don't have that, so I also bought a new coil. It's a frame floor from Pertronics, and I got all this stuff from Napa. I don't know if it shows a part number. Not show up good. Looks like it's part number 40011, and it's supposed to be like a 40,000 volt coil or something on it, I think it said. Yeah, 40,000 available volts. Hope that we didn't have to fire the car. Anyway, these plug wires come pre-cut. You can see right here. If you want to leave them that length, you can just pull this end off and crimp the ends right on here. And you got to make sure you fold the wire over, the little center electrode wire over, so when you crimp it, it's underneath your metal cap you're crimping on there. I'm not going to use those. I'm pretty sure I'm going to cut quite a bit off these to make them fit the way I want them to fit. But what I did first is I laid them out here because they're of course, even though you got to cut them to fit, they're still different lengths. So you lay out, you know, the longest wires first, next longest, and so forth, till you get the shortest. And of course you have this one here that doesn't have an end on either end. That's for your coil wire. And that obviously will be, you can see there's a coil wire. It's going to be cut quite a bit off of that one to make it fit. So anyway, you know, and you know, the longest ones will be your 1-2 cylinder, next ones will be 3-4, 5, 6, 7, 8, of course. You know, the closer you get to the back of the engine, the shorter the wires need to be. So what I'm going to do is, first thing I'm going to do is, I'm going to put a little piece of masking tape at each one of these wires and mark them for each cylinder. And then my plan is, I also bought new plugs. I got the AC Delco's R44TS plugs. See there. That's the part number, and I got all this stuff from Napa. You can get it about any parts store though. And so anyway, I'm going to put new plugs in. I'm going to mark on my plug wires because on the C3 Corvette, at least on mine, 1, 2, 3, 4 cylinders I can get to from above. The 5, 6, 7, 8 plugs I can get to from above. It's a lot more work. And so I'm going to jack the car up to do the back plugs. And then also for the 1, 2, 3, 4 plugs, the wiring is actually ran in a little metal trough, and I'll show you underneath the car when I get to that point. But anyway, I have to jack the car up to get to those, to get the old wires out and put the new wires in. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to trim any of these yet. I'm going to put them all in the car, hook them to the plugs, and then cut them in a length at the distributor after I have them all in there. The other thing I'm going to do, which I don't have it on the table here right now, but I'm going to take and put some dielectric grease in each boot just to kind of help conductivity, and also when you go to take these off again later, that'll kind of help them come off easier, and it also keep from any corrosion or anything building up between your wires and your plugs and your distributors. So anyway, let me get these all marked off, and then we'll do the next part. Okay, got all my wires marked. You can see I've got, this is number 8 wire. I've got it marked at each end, number 8. So as you route them, you don't need to worry about trying to keep track of which wire is which. This is what I use for dielectric grease. I have a big tube because I use a lot of it, but you can buy in little packets and stuff too. You don't need to buy a whole big tube like this for just one little set of plug wires. But what I like to do is I like to take a Q-tip, just put a little bit of grease on it, go in there. You want to kind of grease the boot too, and then go down into the cap, and just, you don't want to put a whole lot in there, but just enough to kind of keep it lubricated. You can probably do a couple of these before you have to put more grease on. And that's what you do. And then we'll get the other ends, we'll get these ends crimped on. We'll do the same thing with those. We'll put the dielectric grease in them, and then we hook them to the distributor. I was also talking about the plugs. You want to make sure when you get new plugs that you set the gap on the plugs. Every manufacturer has certain specifications for certain engines and stuff. My particular engine, the 350 that's in this car, it calls out for 35 thousandths gap on the plug. Okay, and I like to use, you know, they make feeler gauges you can set them with, or these are actually plug setting gauges. They're made out of wire. I like using those kind because it gives you a little bit better feel for the gap and everything. When I got these plugs, they were gapped at almost 45 thousandths. The 40 thousandths would slide on it pretty easy, the 45 wouldn't go in. So I did have to set the gap a little bit closer. And this is a tool here that's on your feeler gauge that you hook it onto the electrode, and you can bend it, either bend it down if you got to close the gap, or you bend it up to open a little bit. And you just keep bending it, you know, till you get it where it'll fit that. That'll slide right on there. If you get it just right, if it goes right in and out, you got to kind of get it just right. Okay, so make sure you do that so you get optimum performance out of your plugs. My car also calls out for a resistor style plug. That's why the number will have an R at the beginning of it, R44TS. The R stands for a resistor style plug. Now, I don't know if all cars require that, but my car does require that. It's just something to keep in mind when you're buying plugs. Make sure you're getting the right plug for the car also. So, okay, well, we'll go over and start pulling the plugs out of the car, and then we'll start routing wires. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to crimp the ends onto the plug wires. I've already crimped the ones that go on my car, so this is a leftover piece of the coil wire. It had the end where it was already pre-cut through the insulation and the outer cover. If you just didn't need to cut them to length. So I'm just going to show you, and this is actually for the HEI cap. The ones for my car are shaped a little bit differently because they have to go inside the cap, where this goes over a little nub on the end of the cap, kind of like a spark plug wire does. But anyway, they both work basically the same. When you cut, if you have to cut them to length, you want to cut through this insulation, this outer layer, and be really careful because you don't want to cut through. When I pull it apart here, you'll see, you just pull this off, and that leaves you the center wire that carries the current to the plug. You want to be careful not to cut through that. So what you want to do is you want to fold this back over the top of this like that. And they recommend cutting, in the instructions it says cut back a ½ inch. I found that wasn't quite long enough for my liking. It just barely went under the crimp on end. So, and even theirs was cut longer than that. That looks like it's about 5/8 of an inch longer. So that's what I was cutting mine at. It works a little better. Then you just slide these ends on, and you want to make sure you have that on this side here. The insulation comes to the end of here. You don't want it down in there where it's going to interfere where it plugs onto the cap. So as long as you're underneath that tab there, that's going to hold it in place. And then you want to fold that center wire down underneath so it's underneath this cap. Okay, and I think they make regular crimping pliers for these, but you can do it with regular pliers. That's what I did mine with. But you just want to grab it kind of like that and start crimping it in. Just take your time. Don't get real rammy and try to crimp it all at once because it'll get away from you. So you just do like that and slowly crimp it in. You can see how it's starting to fold around there. And then what I do is just make sure it's kind of mashing that rubber a little bit. You can kind of see how it's digging into it so it can't pull off when you put it on the distributor and try to take it back off again. So I just crimp it in like that. And that's pretty good right there. That's not going to come off of there. Now this one, on that center electrode, there's wire wrapped around it. And sometimes when you pull this piece off, it'll pull that loose a little bit. So you want to trim that back so that's not hanging out where it could arc, because that does carry current. So what I do is I just come in here and trim that off just like that right at the end of the cap. Okay. Okay, now this is where I use that dielectric grease. I like to take a Q-tip like that, put a little bit on the Q-tip. Doesn't take much. And then you can run it up inside of here. Like that. And that'll lubricate that, so it'll help it slide up over this. And you just shove it in like that, and you just push it all the way in until you can see in that opening there. You see where the wires, I don't know if the light's hitting it right. You can see that end down there now, you can see it. So that's how that goes. And then what I'll do is I'll take a little bit more dielectric grease and I'll smear around on the inside of the boot on this end and down in that cap a little bit. That'll help it slip on easier. And later on when you want to get it off, it helps it kind of come back off easier too. So it's not a real pain getting them on and off. And it also helps keep any kind of corrosion from getting in there and causing an issue with your connection. That'll give you a lot better connection for your spark. So that's how you do the caps. Okay, so I pulled the number 1 and number 3 plug out. I put the new ones in. Now I'm going to just drop the wires down in here. I've got the number 1 wire in now. I'm going to drop the number 3 in and hook it up. And then for the back two, I'll go underneath the car and do that. And then I'll route, while I'm underneath the car, I'll route all these wires where they need to go. Make sure they slip on all the way. There you go. It should kind of snap when it gets in place. Okay, that's those 2 wires. Now I'm going to go over and do the other side and do the 2/4 cylinder from the top here. And actually on that side of the car, I think I can get to all 4 of them from up here, so I'll probably go ahead and do them all. Okay. Okay, this is under the car. This is on the driver's side of the engine. You can see this metal trough right here. That's what bolts to the side of the block. It's got one bolt up here that bolts through the motor mount, and the other one up here bolts into up here on the side of the block. And it goes back to the back of the engine just right above where the oil filter is here. And it opens up, and you have your 2 forward, like on this side it'd be the 1 and 3 plug wire go up through this trough and go out and come out up above this motor mount. You can't really see it in here. But anyway, they come out. Yeah, there's no good way to see it. But they just come out the end of that trough, and then you plug them in onto the spark plugs. And that kind of keeps them protected. It keeps them away from the, as you can see here, the exhaust pipe, and keeps them from rubbing on anything moving around. And then I also, because the trough's open on the back side, it's just like a U-shaped piece here. So I put zip ties around to kind of hold the plugs up against it. And when it comes out, it goes out right up. Again, it's kind of hard to see. But right here, if you can see my finger, probably not. Anyway, it comes out right above that oil pressure sending unit you see there, and goes up to the distributor up behind the back of the motor. So that kind of keeps it all neat and organized, keeps it away from the exhaust, the heat from the exhaust, and kind of keeps it away from the engine too, but protects it from, moving around, rubbing and wearing. So And if you notice, I have an electric sending unit here for the oil pressure. It screws in right above the oil filter, you can see. And the reason that's on there, I don't know if you watched my previous videos, but I said I was going to convert my mechanical oil pressure gauge to an electric one, because I don't like that hollow tube going into the passenger compartment with oil pressurized in it, that if it gets a crack, it could leak oil into the inside a car. I mean, that's the way they were made and designed back in the old days, and they work just fine. But when I decided I was going to get electric gauge and put it in, I bought a gauge, I bought the sending unit, I put the sending unit in, and then I decided to use the old one over. And I just left this in here because just in case I ever do decide to change it later, it's already there. It doesn't hurt anything to have it on there. It's not connected to anything. It doesn't affect the oil pressure or anything like that. So that's why that's on there. On a personal note, I had a little incident about a week ago. It's something I did when I was 12 years old. I was running up some steps and stubbed my toe and broke it, and it started bothering me, and it kept getting worse and worse. And over the years, it got so bad I couldn't hardly walk anymore. It was pushing my big toe over under my middle toe, so I had to go in last week and have surgery on my foot to correct that. So I'm kind of hobbling around a little bit here. I got to wear this boot for 5 weeks, and so it slowed me down a little bit, but it still hasn't slowed me down enough that I'm not doing stuff out in the garage a little bit. So kind of bear with me. I might be moving a little bit slow and hobbling around a little bit, but I'm still getting the job done. And here are the wires routed, looking from the top of the engine. You can see that that's a 2.4 cylinder, and then a 6.8 cylinder here in the back. And then you go up through that little bracket and then up to the distributor. So that's what it looks like. Fairly easy to do, a little time consuming. Got to jack the car up, get underneath of it and everything, but it turned out really well. I'm real happy with it. I like the way the right angle plug wires come out here. You still have the straight one here on the coil. I don't know why they don't give you right angle for that one too, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt anything. It's down below the hood, so it's not rubbing or anything. So that's about it. That's changing plug wires on a C3 Corvette. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the like and subscribe and share them with your friends. And as always, have a great day, and we'll see you on the next video.